Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely incredible story of grassroots cultural transformation. We're going to look at how independent authors are literally rebuilding the Zambian literary landscape from the ground up. And right at the heart of this entire movement is Ingrid Nayame. She's an award-winning novelist who is acting as the architect of what scholars are actually calling the Copperbelt Imaginary. Her journey from a curious kid to a full-on literary powerhouse, well, it's not just a biography, it's really a blueprint for the future of African literature. Okay, let's dive into this. Because to truly appreciate what Nayame has managed to pull off here, you first need to understand one stark, undeniable reality. In Zambia, traditional publishing houses, they just don't exist. There are no massive corporate machines handing out lucrative book deals, no built-in editorial teams, and zero ready-made distribution networks. For a Zambian author, the infrastructure isn't just broken, it's practically a ghost town. This sets the massive stakes for our explainer today. Every single book that makes it into a reader's hands is a sheer triumph of entrepreneurial grit. Section 1. The Copperbelt Daydreamer. This is where we begin our journey from the micro to the macro, anchoring our story in Nayame's roots in Kitwe, the bustling industrial hub of the Zambian Copperbelt. As a young girl attending Rokana Primary School there, Nayame self-identified as a curious tomboy who was always challenging what was expected of her. But even more importantly, she was a chronic daydreamer. And I don't just mean zoning out. These were highly complex internal scenarios packed with dialogue and action. Without even realizing it, this little girl was building the foundation of observational realism, basically practicing how to craft compelling stories long before she ever typed a single word. A hugely pivotal moment for her happened on a childhood trip with her grandmother to Mpulungu, where they boarded the historic Liamba boat on Lake Tanganyika. I mean, picture this. Imagine the sensory explosion for a kid growing up in the landlocked, highly industrial environment of Kitwe. She was suddenly surrounded by all this vastness, contrasted with her grandmother's constantly watchful eye trying to keep her safe. That specific tension between boundless, wild curiosity and the strict need for safety is a dynamic you'll see permeating the journeys of the characters she writes about today. And man, when she finally translated those daydreams onto paper, her professional rise was absolutely meteoric. She dropped her debut novel in 2017. By 2018, she'd snagged a writer in residency at Rhodes University in South Africa. In 2019, she gets recognized globally by the diaspora with a Mwape Peer Award. Then comes the African Writers Trust Fellowship in 2020, which all leads up to this historic sweep in 2023, where she takes home double Ngoma Awards. That is Zambia's highest arts honor, by the way. She won for Most Outstanding Prose and Female Creative Writer. Section 2. Mirroring Zambian Society. Now, what's really interesting about this is how she uses her background working in a library, combined with a literal habit of eavesdropping, to craft these incredibly authentic Zambian narratives. That sharp observation translates beautifully into her major novels. Take The Last Laugh, for example, where she really digs into infidelity and the hypocrisy of middle-class role models. Or The Colored Vine, where she uses this intricate parallel structure to explore the search for mixed-race identity in a really distorted generation. Then you've got Cupid's Arrow, which is literally woven together from years of those gathered conversations, and Hymn for the Womb, which just dives right into the quintessential Zambian emotional depth. She isn't just telling stories, she's actively challenging the moralistic veneer of society. She also brings this brilliant metaphorical depth to the table. For instance, in her upcoming 2026 collection, Hills and Wildflowers, she uses very specific flowers to represent her characters' internal struggles and their chances at redemption. The buttercup symbolizes redemption through emotional vulnerability. The wild indigo, that's about the deep link between truth and self-worth. The evening primrose acts as a remedy for deep isolation, while the black-eyed Susan stands for fierce resilience against past shadows. It's just a masterclass in connecting nature with human psychology. Section 3. The Self-Publishing Struggle. Here, we need to shift our focus outward to the grueling entrepreneurial reality of what it actually takes to get these stories into the hands of readers. So, the crucial point is, crafting beautiful metaphors is really only half the battle. In a traditional publishing model, you've got corporate capital, in-house editors, and established distribution lines. But the Zambian independent model, completely different ballgame. It forces authors to be total polymaths. They have to crowdsource, self-fund. Actually, scratch that, they basically have to act as the full-on CEOs of their own books.
Authors are suddenly having to pay out of pocket for freelance editing, figure out how to design professional-grade book covers, and literally drive physical boxes of books to local shops in Lusaka and Dola themselves. Nayame herself described the intense process of refining a raw manuscript as fighting with your editor. It takes so much cash and a ridiculous amount of patience to turn a daydream into a polished masterpiece that can compete on a global scale.
To actually survive this gauntlet, professionalizing the craft is absolutely essential. And that's exactly what Nayame focused on during her 2020 African Writers Trust Fellowship. By working with industry heavyweights like Ella P. Wakatama and Crystal B. Rutungi, she picked up the critical tools needed for commercial sustainability. She learned the mechanics of structural editing, marketing strategies, and the dense legalities of publishing. It wasn't just about becoming a better writer, it was about transforming into a sustainable, one-woman publishing enterprise. Section 4. The Mahambo Cooperative. Now we zoom way out to the macro level. Looking at the massive collective movement Nayame helped build back in January 2019 to overcome this systemic lack of infrastructure. Because how do you fix a systemic lack of infrastructure when you're just one person? Well, you don't. You build a collective. And let me tell you, Mayambo is so much more than just a casual writing group. It acts as a professional publisher, pooling the very limited financial and creative resources of its members to ensure strict quality control. But beyond that, it's a vital social network, a safe space for historically isolated writers to collaborate and hold each other up in a really tough market. Let's move to and see how this builds into their incredibly structured anthology process. First, they put out a national call for submissions. Second, they run a rigorous, completely anonymous adjudication process, so it's based purely on merit. And third, and guys, this is a massive milestone for the Zambian market, they actually provide publication and direct remuneration. For their Sister Wives project, contributors didn't just get exposure, they received a CAL 1000 cash prize and 17 physical copies of the book to sell for their own profit. That is a huge deal. And the work they are putting out is profoundly impactful. Mayambo does not shy away from the hard stuff. The Sister Wives anthology bravely tackled massive social taboos like gender-based violence and child abuse, topics that traditional media will often just ignore. Mudzimu wa Chikondi explored the very heart and soul of Zambia. Through these collections, Mayambo is effectively amplifying marginalized voices from every corner of the country. All of this is happening at such a profoundly symbolic moment, too. As Zambia celebrates its 60th Diamond Jubilee, under the theme, Honoring Our Heritage, Embracing Our Future Beyond, writers like Ingrid Nayame and the entire Mayambo collective are stepping up. They're acting as cultural intercessors, fiercely preserving the heritage of the nation while simultaneously and very boldly writing its future. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. What actually happens to the future of African literature when authors take the means of production completely into their own hands? As you've seen today, when a Copperbelt daydreamer decides to build an entire industry from scratch, it doesn't just result in some great novels. It turns quiet, internal imaginations into a powerful, undeniable national dialogue. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you leave here feeling as inspired by the sheer resilience of these Zambian literary architects as I am.